The stars had always been silent. Endless, cold, and empty, they stretched across the sky like a frozen ocean. Humanity had reached into this darkness, planting colonies on planets no one else dared to touch. Most were harsh worlds, frozen, burning, or filled with storms, but humans adapted. They survived where nothing else could. On one of the harshest planets, called Korath Prime, the wind cut like knives. The mountains rose jagged and cruel, and the air was thin and biting. But the humans who lived there, the Deathworlders, had learned to thrive. Commander Mara Lynn stood atop a ridge overlooking the icy valley. Her eyes, sharp and thoughtful, scanned the horizon. Behind her, the colony moved like ants against the ice, lights flickering, small fires burning in the bitter cold. She had grown up in places like this, trained by storms, hunger, and danger. Nothing came easy, but that was how the Deathworlders were made. They were strong, clever, and unbreakable, and yet, despite her confidence, Mara felt a chill today that had nothing to do with the cold. It started with the signal. A faint pulse, almost lost in the endless hum of the cosmos. Mara had been listening for weeks, tracking a pattern that made her heart beat faster. Then it became clear. It was an SOS, a cry for help unlike anything they had encountered before. It was old, crackling across light years, desperate, pleading, human. Or at least human enough for her to recognize the fear behind it. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the sensors. "It's someone out there," she said, her voice low. The small team gathered behind her, breathing quiet in the freezing air. "Someone is asking for help." "Commander," Jiro the navigator spoke up, voice tight. "It's not from any human settlement we know. It's beyond the charts, somewhere unknown, possibly alien." Mara's heart skipped a beat, but she did not show it. The fear of the unknown had always been humanity's shadow, but there was something else stirring inside her, something older, stronger. It was hope, the kind that refused to die even when the odds were impossible. "We answer," Mara said firmly, stepping away from the ridge. Her voice carried across the small group, steady and commanding. "No one is left behind. No one. Prepare the ships. We are going to find them." The crew moved quickly, trained for speed and survival. Every action they took was precise, efficient, honed by years on a death world that demanded perfection. They checked supplies, powered the ships, and plotted a course into the dark unknown. Outside, the wind howled like a living thing. But inside the colony, a different kind of storm had begun. A storm of anticipation, hope, and fear tangled together. In the small quarters of the command center, Mara watched the signal again. The SOS repeated, broken and distorted. "Help. Dying. Please. Don't leave." Each word was a spark in the void, a whisper that made her pulse race. Somewhere out there, someone's life depended on them, and the Deathworlders would not fail. Children pressed their faces against frosted windows, watching the lights of the colony flicker. They had never seen the stars up close, never imagined the emptiness of space beyond their mountains. And yet now they felt it, the thrill of hope, the sense that someone somewhere needed them. Humanity had always survived, and here on a planet that could have killed them 100 times over, that same survival instinct burned brighter than ever. Mara walked through the corridors, touching the shoulders of her crew, seeing the tension in their eyes. She saw pride, determination, and fear all at once. "We are humanity's edge," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Where others fail, we endure. Where others run, we rise." The fleet prepared for launch. Engines roared to life, metal and fire cutting through the icy night. Mara climbed into the command ship, hands steady on the controls. She looked out at the stars once more. The SOS pulsed again, faint but insistent. Somewhere out there across the endless dark, a human, or maybe something like a human, was crying for help. And humanity would answer. It was a single signal, a single plea, but it carried the weight of entire worlds. It called out to the strong, the brave, and the willing. And in the hearts of the Deathworlders, that call ignited something that had slept for too long. A fire, fierce and unyielding, that would not stop until the echo of that SOS was met. until hope was restored, until humanity once again proved that no matter the odds, no one was ever truly alone. The fleet moved into the black, slicing through the endless void with precision. Each ship carried a hardened crew, trained to survive where others would die. The Deathworlders were made for this, born on worlds where storms could tear cities apart, where hunger and cold were constant enemies. Space was another kind of death world, just bigger, darker, and colder. Commander Mara Lynn stood on the bridge of the lead ship, staring into the black sea of stars. Each point of light was a sun, a world, or a distant civilization. Yet despite the beauty, the emptiness pressed on her chest like ice. The SOS pulsed again, weak but persistent, echoing across light years, calling them forward. Jiro, her navigator, leaned over the console, eyes tense. "We're cutting through uncharted regions," he said softly. "No one has mapped this path. Radiation storms, rogue asteroids. We're on our own." Mara didn't flinch. Danger was nothing new. She had survived blizzards that shredded flesh, creatures that hunted without mercy, and starvation that gnawed like a living thing. Space was just another challenge. "Then we survive it," she said. Her voice was calm, but inside a storm of anticipation and fear churned. "We have a duty. Someone is out there, and we will reach them." Days blurred into nights, though in space night was meaningless. The crew moved in shifts, scanning, repairing, and keeping watch. Each member felt the pull of the SOS, the same tug that Mara had felt on Korath Prime. It was a whisper in the dark, a reminder that life, fragile, fleeting, was waiting somewhere beyond the cold void. In the observation deck, Mara stood alone at times, watching the distant stars. She remembered the children back home, watching the lights of the colony flicker. Did they imagine this vast emptiness? Did they dream of adventure? Of hope beyond the mountains and ice? Mara wondered if they would ever understand what it meant to follow a faint, desperate cry across the stars and fight through every danger to answer it. "Commander?" Jiro's voice broke her thoughts. He pointed to the sensors. "The signal. It's stronger. We're getting closer." Mara felt a shiver. It was not fear but anticipation. Closer meant danger. Closer meant life. And in the same moment she realized something else. The SOS was not just a call for help. It was a test. It called to those who were willing to risk everything, to cross the edge of darkness, to rise when hope seemed impossible. The fleet faced storms of radiation, rogue debris, and unexpected gravitational pulls. Each obstacle could have destroyed them, yet the Deathworlders pressed on. Mara watched the crew work tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the red glow of warning lights. Every action, every decision, carried the weight of countless lives. They were not just surviving, they were fighting for someone they had never met, for humanity itself. Late in the journey, an alarm rang. Sensors detected a strange energy signature, a massive presence moving ahead of them, unknown and alien. Panic flickered among the crew, but Mara's voice cut through it like steel. "Steady, fear is what they want. Humanity does not bow to the unknown. Humanity rises." The words were more than command. They were a creed. The Deathworlders had survived deathworlds, storms, monsters, and famine. They had endured the unimaginable. Now the galaxy itself would test them, and they would rise. As they neared the signal's origin, the SOS pulsed more clearly, almost like a heartbeat. It was a rhythm of life, fragile yet insistent. Mara pressed her hand to the console, feeling a strange kinship with whoever was out there. "Hold on," she whispered. "We're coming." For the first time in weeks, the crew allowed themselves a small smile, a spark of hope amidst exhaustion. In the infinite dark, one message had reached them, and humanity had answered. The journey had changed them all. Fear remained, yes, but beneath it courage had grown. A fire had awakened, fierce and bright, fueled by determination and the knowledge that across the void, someone's life depended on them. Every decision, every sacrifice, every mile of empty space had a purpose, and soon they would reach it. Soon the Deathworlders would find the source of the SOS and face whatever waited there. Danger, yes, but also life, hope, and the chance to prove that humanity, no matter where it lived, no matter what the stars held, would never abandon those in need. The fleet sailed deeper into the dark, engines humming like a heartbeat, carrying the courage of worlds born from ice, fire, and struggle. Somewhere ahead across the unmeasured void a life awaited, and humanity, stubborn, unyielding, and alive, would meet it head-on. The fleet emerged from the darkness into a world that should have been beautiful. From orbit the planet looked alive, forests stretched in endless green, rivers sparkled like silver veins, and mountains rose with grace. But closer inspection revealed the truth. This world was scarred. Ruins dotted the surface. Smoke curled from shattered cities, and ships once sleek and alive now floated like burned-out husks in orbit. Mara's stomach tightened. The SOS had brought them here, and what waited below was not a welcoming signal. It was a warning. Something terrible had happened, and whatever it was, it had left destruction in its wake. "Scan for life signs," Mara ordered. Her voice was calm, but her heart pounded. Each reading returned the same answer. Faint, scattered, terrified human biosignatures. Survivors, but only a few. The crew braced as they landed. The cold air, heavy with smoke and the smell of burning metal, greeted them. Mara led the first team down from the landing bay, boots crunching over debris. Broken buildings leaned precariously, and the wind carried cries that were almost but not quite human. Jiro scanned the readings with wide eyes. They barely survived. Their systems, oxygen, food, medical, everything is failing. The Deathworlders moved with practiced precision. They cleared pathways, guided survivors to safety, and shielded the weak from falling debris. Children clung to adults' hands, eyes wide with fear, faces streaked with soot and tears. For a moment, the Deathworlders felt the full weight of the SOS, the desperation, the terror, the hope that someone, anyone, might come. Mara approached a small group of survivors huddled under a collapsed structure. They were human but gaunt, haunted, eyes hollow from loss and hunger. A little girl looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "You came?" "Yes," Mara said, crouching to meet her eyes. "We came." Her words were simple, but they carried a promise that stretched across the galaxy. Humanity does not leave its own behind. A mother wept, clutching a small child. We thought no one would find us." Mara placed a hand on her shoulder. "We found you. You are not alone. You will survive. Humanity never abandons those in need." The Deathworlders set up shelters, medical stations, and food distribution points. Every action, every decision was calculated, precise, and filled with care. It was not enough to merely survive. They needed to restore hope. And hope was fragile, more delicate than metal or wood. It had to be nurtured. As night fell, Mara walked among the survivors, seeing faces lit by small fires. Some stared silently, as if trying to remember what it felt like to be safe. Others spoke softly to the Deathworlders, asking questions, telling stories, hoping that someone would listen. Mara realized that their job was not only to protect them from danger, but to rekindle their belief in humanity itself. Jiro approached her, eyes dark with worry. "Commander, the readings suggest more than just survivors. There's evidence of alien activity. Whatever attacked them, it may still be out there. We need to prepare." Mara nodded, feeling a familiar tension coil in her chest. "I know," she said. "But right now, these people need to breathe. They need to know they are not forgotten. We will deal with the rest, whatever comes together." As she looked up at the stars through the shattered roofs of the ruined buildings, Mara felt a surge of something she had not felt in a long time. Pride. These were not just survivors. They were witnesses to the strength of humanity, to the unyielding fire of the Deathworlders. And they would carry that fire forward, even in the face of fear. Night deepened, and the colony stirred quietly under the protection of their rescuers. Fires burned, shelters were built, and slowly a fragile calm returned. But Mara knew the calm was temporary. The galaxy did not forgive weakness. Danger lingered like a shadow on the horizon, waiting for the first mistake. Yet in that quiet, Mara allowed herself a moment of hope. They had answered the SOS. They had arrived when it mattered most, and in doing so the Deathworlders had awakened fully, not just their survival instincts but their humanity. They were protectors now, not just fighters. The survivors slept under blankets and metal roofs, fragile yet alive. The children dreamed for the first time in days of safety and warmth. And somewhere deep in the hearts of the Deathworlders a fire blazed brighter than ever before. This planet had been shattered. Lives had been broken. But humanity had arrived as it always did. And in that arrival, the first whispers of a new hope began to grow. Hope that would soon face the galaxy itself and shine like a beacon in the darkness. The survivors had begun to rebuild, small fires casting warm light across the ruins. Children played quietly near shelters, laughter fragile but alive, and mothers whispered words of comfort. But Mara knew the calm was temporary. The sensors had not lied. The attackers were coming back. Reports arrived through the fleet's communications. Alien ships, fast and deadly, were approaching the planet's orbit. Their silhouettes were unlike anything humans had ever seen, sleek, dark, and terrifyingly silent. Their numbers were far greater than Mara's fleet. Panic could have crept in, but she refused to let it. Fear was the enemy and courage was the weapon. "Prepare defenses," Mara commanded. Her voice was firm, carrying across the command ship. "Evacuate the survivors to safe zones. Every able hand will fight. Every weakness must be covered. Humanity does not yield to threats, not ever." The Deathworlders moved like a living machine, bodies trained and minds sharpened by harsh worlds. Shields were reinforced, barricades built, and weapons loaded. Every adult, every fighter, even some older children who had been trained on Korath Prime were ready. They had faced storms, predators, and death before, and now they faced the unknown. Jiro's hands flew across the navigation console. "Commander, the aliens are entering orbit. Their fleet is enormous. If they break through, the survivors on the surface won't last 5 minutes." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Then we make sure they don't break through." She turned to the crew, her words sharp and commanding. "Remember who you are. Deathworlders do not bow. We fight, we endure, we protect. Today humanity rises." The fleet engaged the alien attackers in orbit. Explosions lit the darkness like deadly fireworks. Mara's ships dodged and weaved, striking with precision. Every maneuver was a testament to human ingenuity and courage. The aliens were strong, but they had not met humanity like this before. On the planet, the Deathworlders moved among the survivors, guiding them into shelters, calming their fears, and preparing them for the chaos to come. Mara walked through the ruins, watching as adults carried supplies while children huddled together under blankets. Every human she saw reminded her why they fought. Every life saved was a victory. Despite their courage, the battle in orbit was fierce. One alien warship broke through the perimeter, sending a wave of energy across the fleet. Mara acted instantly. She coordinated a counterattack, using ingenuity rather than brute force. A small squadron of Deathworlders maneuvered through the alien fleet, striking at weak points. Ships exploded, fires spreading across the void, but the aliens hesitated. "Commander, they're regrouping," Jiro shouted. Mara clenched her fists. "Good. Let them see who they face." She looked toward the planet below. The survivors were safe for now, and that was enough to steel her resolve. They had given her a purpose greater than fear or self-preservation. Humanity had come to answer the call, and nothing would stop them. As the battle raged, Mara saw acts of bravery that would be remembered for generations. Young pilots risked everything to save transports. Engineers on the ground used ingenuity to repair weapons and shields in the middle of enemy attacks. Every human was a force of defiance, refusing to bow, refusing to die without a fight. Hours passed like minutes. Explosions shook ships, alarms blared, and the galaxy seemed to tremble. But slowly the tide turned. The aliens, perhaps unused to such relentless courage and strategy, began to retreat. The fleet pressed forward, driving them back, refusing to stop until the survivors below were safe. Finally, as the alien ships disappeared into the void, a silence fell over the planet and the fleet. Mara took a deep breath, chest tight, eyes scanning the horizon. The battle was won for now. The survivors emerged from shelters, faces lighting up with cautious hope. Children laughed again, tentative but real. Adults hugged each other, tears mingling with soot and sweat. Mara looked out at the stars. Somewhere far beyond the chaos, the SOS that had called them here pulsed faintly, a reminder that life and hope could survive even the darkest moments. Humanity had answered, and in doing so it had shown the galaxy that the Deathworlders and all of humanity would not be defeated. The crew worked through the night, repairing, reinforcing, and preparing for whatever might come next. Mara walked among them quietly, feeling a deep pride. Humanity had faced a terrible threat and had risen not just to survive, but to protect those who could not protect themselves. In the heart of the survivors, in the eyes of the Deathworlders, a new flame burned, a flame of courage, of resilience, of humanity at its finest. Mara whispered softly to herself, "We fight, we endure, we rise, always." The galaxy was vast, the darkness endless, but humanity had shown its light, and that light would never go out. The battle had been won, but the war was not over. Mara knew it. The aliens had retreated, but they would return. Intelligence reports showed massive reinforcements moving through the void, faster than any human fleet could intercept. The survivors were safe for now, but the threat lingered like a shadow over the planet. Mara stood on the command bridge, staring at the holographic display of approaching enemy forces. Her jaw was tight. "We have no choice," she said, voice low but firm. "We need to strike before they reach the planet again. Someone must go into their fleet. Someone must make a sacrifice to save the rest." Silence filled the room. Every crew member understood the weight of her words. Eyes met eyes, some filled with fear, others with determination. The Deathworlders were bred to endure, but even they knew that what Mara asked was more than endurance. It was courage beyond measure. Kai, a young but experienced pilot, stepped forward. His face was steady, eyes bright with resolve. "I'll do it," he said simply. "It's what we do. We fight for others. I will stop them, even if it costs me my life." Mara's throat tightened. She wanted to protest, to tell him no, but she knew deep down that Kai had the heart of a true Deathworlder. He had been trained to survive the impossible, to act when hope seemed lost and to rise when others faltered. She nodded slowly. "Then go. Make it count." Kai climbed into his shuttle, the smallest vessel in the fleet, armed with explosives designed to cripple the alien warship. He looked back at Mara one last time, giving a small nod that carried courage, love, and promise. Then, with engines roaring, he sped toward the enemy, a tiny human streak against the vast darkness of space. Mara watched, heart pounding, as the shuttle weaved through enemy defenses. Blaster fire streaked past, but Kai did not falter. He dove toward the heart of the alien warship, sending the signal to detonate. The explosion was massive, a fiery bloom in the void, shaking nearby ships and sending shockwaves across space. Mara felt the tremor even in her chest. The fleet cheered, but it was a bitter triumph. Kai's sacrifice was the cost of victory. Mara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed openly. Humanity had answered the SOS, yes, but the price was tangible, raw, and unbearable. Every survivor on the planet would live because one brave soul had given everything. On the surface, the survivors watched the sky, sensing the explosions above. Some understood it. Some only felt the hope that returned with the diminishing alien threat. Children clutched each other, whispering prayers to heroes they would never meet, while adults bowed their heads, mourning the cost of their survival. Mara turned to her crew, voice steady though her chest ached.
Kai gave his life so we could save others.
Remember that. Remember that humanity rises not because it fears death, but because it protects life. That is who we are. That is the spirit of the Deathworlders. For hours the fleet repaired, regrouped, and tended to the wounded. Mara walked through the corridors, touching shoulders, offering words of comfort. Every crew member carried the weight of sacrifice, but also the fire of purpose. Humanity had shown, in the void of space and on a broken world, that courage and selflessness could shine brighter than any star. At night, Mara returned to the observation deck. The stars seemed quieter, almost respectful of the cost paid. She allowed herself to remember Kai's bravery, the small nod that had said everything words could not. Somewhere in the galaxy a life had ended, but countless others had begun again. In the survivors' eyes, hope returned. The children laughed quietly, still cautious, still fragile, but alive. Adults worked to rebuild, carrying the knowledge that humanity had come for them. Even when the odds were impossibly stacked against them, Mara whispered into the darkness, a vow to carry forward what had been given. We rise because we must. We fight because it is right. And we endure, because humanity never abandons those in need. The SOS had been answered. The lost colony was saved. But it was not just survival. It was humanity at its finest, forged in fire, sacrifice, and unwavering courage. Somewhere in the infinite void, Kai's name would live. Not just as a fallen pilot, but as a symbol. Humanity could rise against impossible odds even when faced with death itself. And the Deathworlders, hardened by storms, ice, and struggle, had awakened fully. The stars were silent again, but they carried the echo of one act of bravery, one sacrifice, and one promise that humanity, unbroken and fierce, would never stop, would never falter, and would always answer the call of those in need. The planet was quiet now. Fires burned low across the ruins, casting long shadows that danced with the wind. The survivors moved among the shelters, rebuilding what little they could, their hands guided by hope instead of fear. Children played with fragments of toys or scavenged bits of metal, pretending they were spaceships, while their laughter carried across the open fields like a fragile promise. Commander Mara Lin walked through the settlement, observing every action, every detail. Her eyes softened as she saw the survivors slowly regain confidence, slowly feel safe again. They had witnessed horrors unimaginable, yet they were alive, and that life was precious. Humanity had answered their cry for help, not with words alone, but with action, with sacrifice, with courage that burned brighter than any star. The Deathworlders had not just saved lives, they had awakened something deeper. Mara watched as soldiers and civilians worked side by side. Engineers repaired broken machinery while children fetched tools. Farmers tended to salvaged crops. Every act, no matter how small, carried purpose. It was more than survival. It was a reclaiming of life, a declaration that humanity would not be cowed by darkness. Jiro approached Mara quietly, holding a tablet filled with scans from the fleet. Commander, the enemy's presence is gone for now. But our sensors indicate the galaxy is watching. Other civilizations may take note of what we've done. Mara nodded. She knew it was true. Humanity had always been underestimated, dismissed as fragile, unprepared for the cold truths of space. But here on this scarred planet, the Deathworlders had proven otherwise. Then let them watch, she said softly. Let them see what it means to face humans who refuse to break. Let them see the fire we carry. On the surface, survivors approached the Deathworlders, offering thanks in words that were simple but heartfelt. You saved us, a mother said, eyes shining. You didn't leave us. You fought for us when everything seemed lost. Mara crouched to meet her gaze. We are humanity, she said gently. When someone calls for help, we answer. That is who we are. That is what makes us strong. Night fell across the planet, painting the sky with stars that seemed to shimmer brighter than before. Mara stood atop a small ridge, looking down at the quiet settlement. The wind carried the faint scent of smoke and warmth, mingled with the scent of frozen earth that still clung to the ruins. She thought of Kai, the young pilot who had sacrificed everything to save them, and felt a pang of sorrow mixed with pride. His courage had not been in vain. It had rekindled hope, not just here but in the hearts of all who witnessed it. Across the colony, small fires burned. Survivors huddled together, speaking softly, laughing cautiously, crying quietly. The Deathworlders moved among them, guardians not only of life but of hope. Every hand they extended, every shield they raised, every instruction they gave, carried the weight of humanity's promise, that no one would be abandoned, no one would be left to die alone. Mara looked up at the stars again, and for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine the galaxy taking notice. The SOS that had brought them here was more than a call, it was a test, and humanity had passed. The Deathworlders, hardened by storms, hunger, and endless struggle, had awakened fully. They were not just survivors, they were protectors, heroes, and the living proof that humanity could rise anywhere, against any odds. Jiro joined her, gazing upward in silence. "Do you think they will come back?" he asked quietly. Mara's eyes remained fixed on the stars. "Perhaps," she said, "but we will be ready. Humanity does not cower. Humanity does not flee. And humanity never forgets those who cannot defend themselves." In that quiet night, the colony slept, healed by acts of courage and the simple truth of survival. The Deathworlders gathered quietly, sharing food, stories, and the satisfaction of a battle fought with honor and sacrifice. Somewhere deep inside each of them, a spark burned brighter, a realization that they were not just defending one planet, they were defending the principle of life itself. And so, on this scarred world, humanity's fire blazed quietly, fiercely and unbroken. It was a fire that would spread in whispers and stories across colonies and stars yet untouched. It was a fire born in sacrifice, tested in battle, and strengthened by the courage of ordinary humans willing to risk everything for those in need. Mara stood a little longer on the ridge, feeling the wind on her face, and smiled faintly. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and indifferent, but humanity had awoken. They had answered the SOS, faced the darkness, and emerged not broken but stronger, and from that night forward, the echo of their courage would carry across the stars, a silent promise to all who might call for help. Humanity will rise. The sky above the ruined world was calm, but the galaxy was anything but. Mara Lynn stood on the highest ridge of the settlement, watching the stars shimmer. Somewhere out there, countless civilizations watched silently, their eyes drawn to the tiny cluster of survivors and the fleet that had saved them. Humanity had made its mark, not through conquest or power, but through courage, sacrifice, and unyielding spirit. The survivors had rebuilt shelters, repaired machinery, and begun farming again. Children laughed, tentative yet real, chasing one another across fields scarred by destruction. Adults worked tirelessly, guided by a renewed sense of purpose. They had been broken, yet they were alive. They had been afraid, yet they had hope. Humanity had answered their SOS, and in doing so, had reminded them what it meant to be human. Mara walked through the settlement, observing the small miracles of recovery. She saw a boy repairing a scavenged drone, his hands shaking but determined. She saw a woman teaching children to identify edible plants, laughter mingling with instruction. Everywhere life returned. Not easily, not perfectly, but it returned. The Deathworlders moved among the survivors, guardians in both body and spirit. They shared knowledge, protection, and courage, showing what it meant to endure, to rise, and to fight when all hope seemed lost. Mara knew the impact of their actions would spread far beyond this planet. Stories of bravery, of sacrifice, of humanity at its finest would travel across colonies and star systems. Humans who had never dared to hope would hear of the Deathworlders and remember that they too could rise. Jiro approached Mara quietly, holding a report from the fleet. "The alien forces have not returned, Commander. Their sensors indicate they are retreating far into the void. Humanity has shown them something they will not forget?" Mara nodded. She felt the weight of the entire journey pressing on her shoulders, yet it was not a burden. It was a fire. A fire born from years of survival, from sacrifice, and from unwavering courage. Kai's sacrifice, the battle fought in orbit, and every action of the Deathworlders had lit this fire. Not just for this planet, but for all humanity. The fleet prepared to depart, carrying the survivors to safer colonies, and leaving behind only the Deathworlders to watch over the fragile new settlement. Mara stood at the edge of the landing pad, feeling the wind whip against her face. She looked at the stars and whispered a vow. We will rise. Always. We will answer every call. No one is ever abandoned. Humanity endures. The survivors waved as the ships lifted off, small hands reaching toward the sky. Their eyes shone with gratitude and awe. They had witnessed courage, bravery, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. And they would carry that knowledge with them, spreading hope wherever they went. As night deepened, Mara returned to the observation deck. She gazed at the stars, imagining the countless worlds yet untouched by humanity's presence. Each star represented a life, a civilization, or a world in need. The galaxy was vast and danger was everywhere, but Mara knew humanity had a power unlike any other. It was not weapons, ships, or technology. It was courage. It was the willingness to rise when others would fall, to protect when others would flee, and to fight when others would surrender. The wind howled softly across the ridge, carrying faint echoes of laughter and tears of hope and fear. Mara smiled faintly, feeling a deep, unshakable pride. Humanity had been called to answer a single SOS, a fragile cry across the void. They had answered, and in doing so had awakened something greater, the fire of humanity itself. Somewhere in the dark reaches of space, the echo of that SOS would live on. It would carry the story of Kai, of the Deathworlders, and of every human who had faced impossible odds and refused to break. Across galaxies, whispers of courage would spread, reminding all who heard them that humanity was unyielding, unbroken, and fiercely alive. Mara turned to her crew, the tired but resolute faces of the Deathworlders who had fought beside her. This is only the beginning, she said softly. Every SOS, every call for help, every life in danger. We will rise. Humanity will rise. Always. The stars shone brightly as if answering her words. The galaxy was vast, indifferent, and full of peril, but humanity had awakened its fire. One signal had called them across the stars, and the Deathworlders had answered with courage, sacrifice, and unwavering heart, and so humanity's fire blazed across the universe, fierce and eternal, a promise to all who might need it. We will come. We will fight. And we will endure. The galaxy fell silent once more, but for Mara and her crew, the echo of one SOS had forever changed everything. Humanity would rise again anywhere against anything, and nothing could ever stop them.